Hello, everyone. Hope all of you guys are doing well. I'm doing well, just so you know. Haven't been really active, but I've been connecting with so many new people, and I feel very lucky of the fact that I get this opportunity to talk to so many of them too. And we have John Lenhart with us today. So, John, can you please introduce yourself? And it is an honor having you on.
Hi, I'm John Lenhart. I have a degree in chemistry and chemical engineering, but what I ended up doing was coming up with a model for the mind and the brain. And because everybody does everything through a thought process, I could literally talk about anything. So I'm just kind of anxious to see what you want to talk about.
Yeah, yeah, the mind and the brain. It's really interesting, the connection to everything, because I think everything is connected to your mind and to your brain. It's very mind-boggling itself. So let's start at a simpler thing. So, like I told you before this, and I tell a lot of my guests, I really like to know how were you when you were my age. So can you start a little bit from a younger teenage John and then go from there?
Yeah, so one of my passions is a thing called synaptic pruning. And this occurs to everyone in the world around 13 years old. So you went through it a year or so ago. Now, it looks like you came through it really well. So that's one of the reasons why I was anxious to talk with you, because I have some questions for you about this. But basically what happens is that before you're 13, so you're 11, 12, you have access to every dendrite in your brain. And the word dendrite is the Greek word for tree. So you could see your brain like a forest of trees. And the reason why kids are so smart is they have access to every tree in their brain, and they're just so quick. And what you're doing is when you're using your brain, you're walking a path through your brain. That's you, the mind, you, the intangible you, the mind or the soul, and you walk a path through your physical brain. At 13, your brain cuts all the connections not on the path. So what happens is you have basically from 0 to 13, you've created these pathways in your brain. And then at 13, your body decides those are the pathways you must want to use. It cuts everything else away. You have these pathways, and then puberty supercharges those pathways and turns them into superhighways. So a lot of people think the issue is puberty. It's not, it's synaptic pruning. I did not go through synaptic pruning very well. So I was one of these kids that was very smart, 9, 10, 11, 12. I lived in Los Angeles. I was in all these gifted programs for the entire Los Angeles school district. And then I moved across the country. And at 13, I kind of closed myself off and I went through synaptic pruning, and I just felt like I lost all my energy. And the only abilities I kept was math and science. So you strike me as a person who has a lot of abilities. I was looking at your bio and I saw comedian on there, which I think is hilarious. Okay. So did you notice any difference when you were 12, 13 to 14? Like, do you remember at 12 just having all this energy and being able to just do anything and think anything?
I mean, because I thought that was just like being a teenager. When I thought what everyone thinks. Because for me, when I started professionally working when I was 11, and so I spent most of my year as an 11-year-old at an incubation center where I was incubated, and I knew everything like so well, and I would read anything, and I would just use it so well. And then, I mean, I thought maybe I got dumber when I turned 15. That is not what happened. I think it's really things right now that I really, really care about, that, I remember and I care about and I retain knowledge about, is because I'm so passionate about it. But things, because as an 11 and 12-year-old, I spent most of my time watching Business Insider and Refining 29 and stuff like that. And so I saw so many of these documentaries and so much knowledge in my brain all of a sudden. You know, it was just, I knew so many things about everything. But I think at 13 and 14, or not me, well, my brain decided for me on my behalf, to keep the things that I really truly care about and cut the other ones off because, you know, they're just not as important. But I think it's a very interesting, very interesting concept, because a lot of teenagers that do not know that they're going through just think that they're becoming dumber. So, and which is not all right, of course, because it really affects your mental health and you start to close down as a person. And that's why teenagers go through a phase. That phase is real.
Right. So 14 is when people get in trouble with the law, or they start having these addiction problems. And then, like I said, when I saw you were 14 and I saw some of the videos, I'm like, oh, this person came through it. So let's back up for a second, because this is how I explain it. I'll go into classrooms and talk to 14 and 15-year-olds. And what I tend to say is, do you remember what it was like when you were 12 years old? You had all this energy, everything you said, you felt like you could do anything. You were one of these, you were like me, although you stayed like you. I stopped being like you. But I know what you're talking about is at 11 years old, you could watch something and you'd never forget it. You could watch something one time and everything you watched, you knew, you retained it, you knew everything about everything. That's the way I was, okay? Same way. So you did all that. And then what happens is I like to say, my analogy is a driver in a car. You're who you are, your intangible you is this driver and your brain is the car. And just like you control 10% of the car directly, gas pedal, steering wheel, brake, windshield wiper and stuff, you only control 10% of your brain directly. That's your conscious brain. 90% of your brain is the supercomputer. It's where all the energy is. It's where all the behavior is. That's like the rest of your car. So before you turned 13, it was like you could drive any car. You could drive a race car. You could drive a truck. You could drive anything. And you felt like, give me a car, I could drive it. You could drive any brain. Well, what happens is at 13, you got stuck with one kind of car now. You only have one car. I think you have kind of a race car, okay? And it feels, and you can tell me, but it feels like you are a race car driver and you ended up with a race car brain. Would you say that?
Yeah. I would, because I mean, for me personally, right now, my brain functions not the way I want it to function. In terms of like, I'm yeah, again, I do have like some memory and focus problems. I have like a lot of focus problems. I lose focus really quick.
We'll talk about that later, okay?
Yeah, but I think I do, and it's basically just your brain developing personality, I guess, sort of say it's a way to say it, because like, a person, you're whoever you want to be with the person. And I think people change with the people that they talk to. And I think your brain's kind of like that. And then, at a certain age, your brain matures and goes like, I'm going to be who I want to be. And that's what happens. It's like basically personality development of your brain.
Right. So you just jumped way ahead. So I'm going to have to slow you down, bring you back. You're a race car driver. Okay. So I love your line. You said, I can do whatever I want with my brain. That's okay. So I remember that point. That's what makes me think you pruned well. So now I'm going to take you into the shoes of somebody who didn't. So a lot of the teenagers, and I say 98% of teenagers, this is what it feels like. And you described it perfectly, is all of a sudden they could drive any car and all of a sudden they prune down. And let's say they're a truck driver and now they have a race car for a brain. What happens is all of a sudden after synaptic pruning, they go to turn the steering wheel to the right and their car goes to the left. They turn the radio on and the windshield wipers go. And now they don't feel like they're in control of their brain. Yeah. Like, I don't understand, I do this, I do that. And then puberty just makes them like, I don't know what's going on. And they're just steering and they're doing all this stuff. And that's when they just crash. So I love the line you said, I can control my brain. You can. Most teenagers come out of synaptic pruning and they all of a sudden lose the ability to control the brain. And then unfortunately, they're not matched to their car. And now they start panicking, and that's all the angst and everything you see in these teenagers.
Yeah, that's why they're always like shutting doors and screaming. That would make a lot of sense. That is a lot of I mean, I mean, there's always frustrated moments, I think, for everyone, but mine never came from a part where my mind didn't resonate with my heart. And I'm like, oh my God, what is this? Like, I never wanted to scream into a pillow, really, so to say. But I do know people that did. Like I know people that I've known as children and then I met them as teenagers. They were like, oh my God, what just happened? But, you know, again, this is a process and it always takes time. So how long is the process? Again, there's one step where it's like, so, you know, you're functioning with different cars. And then your mind goes like, you're a truck driver. And then so there's a whole shift from there. And then but how much time does it take for you to go like, no, my brain is a truck driver. I need to learn how to function out. So how is the whole phase of adaptability?
I love your questions because you are so quick. Okay, I'm well, I'm frustrating you by bringing you back because you asked like three really good questions in a row. So what I do is I walk into these classrooms with these students and I tell that story what I just told. I usually say, what was it like when you were 12? And the kids will raise their hand. I was so smart. I had so much energy. And then I explain not being able to drive their car, and every one of them just goes, "That's it. That's it." And I say, "Here's what I'm going to do," because I'll go in the classroom and I'll work with them for a year. And I'll say, here's what we're going to do. So if I was talking to you at 14 and you're not, you didn't prune well, you did, but let's say you didn't, I would tell you, I'm going to help you in 2 steps. Step one is we're going to spend half the year helping you drive your mismatched car. I know this is not the car you want. I know that, but I'm going to help you drive it safely because I want you to be around for the second half. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to cover a bunch of things that allow you to drive that safely. Then the second half of the year, I'm going to help you get the car back that you want. And all of them are like this. And that's what we do is we spend half a year learning how to communicate in a safe manner. So it is like a truck driver with a race car. It's like, hey, you really need to just learn how to drive this thing. I know it's not your car. I know it's frustrating, but let's learn to drive it safely. If that person says, no, I'm not going to do it, they're going off a cliff. Okay. But if they learn to do that, now a lot of these people never learn how to bring that car back. And they spend their life having to just drive this car safely. It's not the car they want. And at some point they freak out. And you said it way early in this is where all these mental health issues come from. You said that, you're right. This is how I'd explain all these mental health issues is it is your mind not syncing up with your brain, and your mind wants to do one thing and you're stuck with this stupid brain that doesn't match you. I help people get that brain back. So that's what I do. And so it doesn't take very long. You know, we can usually do this in like 8 weeks, but when I show up once a week, it's usually like, 3-4 months to get it safe and then 3 to 4 months to get it back.
I see. I mean, it's just kind of like, like my dad says when I ask him, when are you going to let me drive? Because here in Pakistan, we don't have permits. So you straight get your license at 18. And he goes like, and I was talking about, you need to get me a stellar car so that I can learn driving. He's like, you learn with the car we have right now. Once you drive like a normal human being, which I highly doubt I ever will. But once you learn how to drive, and I know that you're safe out there with whatever you're driving, I'll buy you whatever car you want. So it's kind of like that. If you like cooperate with, my dad in this case, and just learn how to be safe on the road, then it doesn't really matter whether you have like a Mustang or you have a weird car. So I forgot the names of the car all of a sudden. So I guess it's all about the road safety, which is a weird.
He's saying the same thing I'm saying. He said the same thing I'm saying is step one is learn to drive safely. Because what you want to do is you want to learn that and get it in you so you don't have to think about it. Then you can enjoy driving. That's one of the issues with teenagers is they want to, in the first step, just enjoy everything. And the reality is everything in life is you first learn to do something that you've never done and learn to do it safely. If you just learn it without doing it safely, then when you go to have fun, you're going to hurt yourself. Learn to do it safely, then you have fun doing it. And so I love what your dad said. I think it's perfect. And I also did a little research and some of the things you said about your dad and stuff. And I think your dad intuitively knows who you are. And I think your dad is the one that helped you through synaptic pruning, because the key to synaptic pruning is, and this is what I do for kids 11 and 12, is I help them figure out who they are, what kind of driver they are at 11 and 12. And then I tell the parents and I tell them with their friends to have people encourage you to stay in that mode as you turn 13 and 14. Because then if you act that way, your brain will prune to you. And I believe that your dad, I mean, how did you, what was your dad doing for you 12 and 13?
I was just going to say that because I'm like, when you were saying this, the first thought in my mind is like, oh my God, John and my dad should talk. Because my dad, so some of the earliest memories I have is my dad just taking me to like the bizarrest places. So I've been to like, strawberry fields, and I've been to beaches, and I've been to so many places in my country and outside of my country too. And I have seen a lot of things. I remember like I had a phase where I was like, I'm gonna be a dentist. And then I went to the dentist office and I spent some time there. And the moral of the story that was I don't want to be a dentist.
Why?
Because it's just not my thing in terms of, I don't know, looking into people's mouth. And then I realized I forget the fact that my legs start feeling weird and I would get almost to a point of fainting as soon as I see blood. And
so I got to tell you, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I got to tell you this story, okay? Because you and I are like on the same page. And I shared this with this guy, Colin. I shared my story. Every test I took in high school said I should be a dentist. Every one of them. Okay. And so what happens, because there's so many different things to do and you're modeling and you're working with your hands, every one of them. So when I was in high school, there was a club that we went to learn, Future Dentist Club. And I went to 2 sessions, and the second session, they started showing all the blood. And I went, I can't do this because I faint at the sight of blood. So this is funny. You and I, exactly the same thing. Yep. I was like, yeah, I'm going to be a dentist. I can't be a dentist. So yeah, I get that.
Yeah. And so it's that. And then I had like bizarre different phases. And so my dad was like, okay, so this is what you want to do. Sure. And so the thing was like, he took me to so many places and I met so many new people, and he introduced me to so many ways that I could, just so many professions and so many fields that I could get into, that I had exposure. And then the second I saw stand-up comedy and social entrepreneurship and just talking to people. So it was stand-up comedy, and I'm like, oh, making people laugh. And then I was like, oh my God, I love this. Then it was social entrepreneurship. And I'm like, oh my God, this is my thing. And I saw people that network for a living. And then I went nuts. Like, that is to summarize it. And so that happened when I was already going to networking events when I was 10. But when I had the realization that I need to be one was when I was 12 and a half. And so I think that is why, because I knew what I was doing. And when I was 12, I'd met a NASA astronaut, an AI robot, and I'd interviewed so many people, so many celebrities I saw on TV growing up. And I met so many different people. I think it was very easy for me to, go through my brain telling me, oh, this is what you like. We're just going to stick to that, because I think maybe I already knew what I liked. And so if, it's already sort of in sync, even if it just glitches for a moment, you don't feel it like a crisis, like, a wrecking ball. You don't feel like, oh my God, everything's ruined, because it doesn't come as a surprise. And if it does, then again, you are that driver that, just, puts his hands away and are like, what is happening. So
Right. So we're human and everything really is measured in energy. If we were robots, it would all be facts. And so what you're talking about is you have all this energy doing this stuff. The people that are frustrated, they don't have any energy. And then they panic because they have lack of energy. Now, I want to say one more thing about your dad. One of my passions also is leadership. And I went on LinkedIn and I would ask people, what's your definition of leadership? And less than 5% of people ever answered this. And these are people who would talk about leadership. And I'd say, that sounds great. I just want to understand you. What's your definition of leadership? Never have an answer. And all of mental health begins in definitions. A leader is someone who facilitates the purpose and progress of another person. If you know your purpose and you're making progress, you don't need a counselor, you don't need any help. Everybody who's struggling with mental health either doesn't know their purpose or they're not making progress. A boss facilitates their own purpose and progress at the expense of another. Your dad is a leader. So the measure, you go back, everything you talk about your dad, why did he introduce you to a NASA astronaut? Why did he? It was all for your benefit.
yeah.
So not everybody has a dad who's doing things for their benefit. There's a lot of people who have a dad who says, hey, Raheen, you need to do this for my benefit. So that your dad is a leader, and leaders are very rare. It is very rare to find somebody, and I'm going to say this, it's very rare to find males who facilitate the purpose and progress of others. A lot of males are, you're going to do this and you're going to do this for me. I think women intuitively understand, you got to be about other people. Us guys don't. So I think you're really blessed to have a dad like that, and I think he really is responsible for helping you through this synaptic pruning. And he put all these things in front of you and you felt that energy and you kept your brain through it. So you're very fortunate to make it through like you are. So if people go, how come there's a 14, 15-year-old doing this? I think all 14, 15-year-olds could do this if they synaptically right. If you hadn't, you'd be miserable and lacking energy and not a lot of fun to listen or talk to. So
Yeah, that's really true. And what you said about my dad, because I'm already recording, I'm gonna keep that snippet because there's so many moments where I have my teenage ones and I'm like, oh my God, mom and dad, you're not making sense right now. And then that is when I come and see this, because like this, and I think I'm really grateful for my parents, because if it wasn't already in sync, I think I would be a wreck by now. And I would be like, what is happening? So and I think parents do play a lot of role, because for me, I get a lot of compliments, but the best compliments ever are those that comes from parents, and they say that I want my daughter to be like you. Although, the logical answer to that is, are you sure you want your daughter to be like me? But it's really sweet for someone to think, of you highly enough to say that. And so, and if also parents come up to me for advice, I say to them, just facilitate their craziness, just facilitate, because I remember my dad would like come from his office. He would not even sit down. I'd be like, guess what I saw today? And he'd be like, what did you see today? And then I'd tell him about diamond mining. And then I would tell him about, so many crises around the world. And I tell him about, from anything about like celebrity gossip to what I want to be and to new cool things that we can do. And he would listen to me. But if it was any other parents, they would, shush them down. Like many parents I know would do that. They'd be like, you know what? It doesn't look like, I care right now. It's a later thing. So I think because they always listened to me, that it was possible. And again, it's always, when I went through like 13, 14, you no matter what, you feel a lot of frustration inside of you because of so many things. Because it's like, high school. Then it's not just high school. It's like good grades, good college. You start thinking about college as soon as you're a freshman. Because every when I got into high school, every single person told me one thing: Nobody cares what you did in middle school. High school, everything matters. That's what all of them say. And it freaks you. But I think it's important to have parents. Do you sometimes find difficulty explaining this process to parents and just making them understand to like give the children space and to support them and not call them crazy?
The thing is that the parents are really overwhelmed. And when a parent comes to me and wants help, I absolutely help them. And what I'm doing is the key is to figure out your child's uniqueness. So what your dad did was he had his real goal, I think, was to figure out who you are and then try to encourage you in that. And that's what helps with synaptic pruning. A lot of parents aren't trying to figure out who their kid is, or worse, a lot of parents think that everybody, I'm going to say, it's just not parents, but I am talking about parents. Everybody thinks that everybody else thinks like them.
Yeah.
And so when you learn this uniqueness, when I start teaching the parents the uniqueness, what instantly happens is they go, oh, wait a minute, my kid doesn't think like me. I think like this and I do things like this. My kid thinks like that. And so I tell you, the worst thing that I deal with is, let's say a parent has a uniqueness that would have made them a doctor. They could have been a doctor and they would have had a lot of energy being a doctor. So then they look at their child and say, you should be a doctor. Now, for that child, they're smart enough to be a doctor, but they would have no energy being a doctor all day.
Yeah.
But the parent goes, no, you should be. Why? Because I wanted to be a doctor. My parents wanted me to be a shop owner. And it's like, one of the things the parents do is they pass down this, I think you think like me, and I missed this out. I don't want you to miss it out. So you need to do this. And it's like, rather than what I teach these parents is, wait a minute, if you understand your kid's uniqueness, then not only can you help them go the right way, but behavior. You know, all behavior issues have to do with you're not talking to somebody and their uniqueness. If your dad started talking to you like a truck driver instead of a race car driver, you'd lose all your energy. And then you'd start acting out and the behavior would go away. So that's one of the things is when you have your moments, it's because you're not really sure, am I doing something that's me or am I doing something that's someone else? And I want to say this quick about high school. I find it so frustrating to talk to people in high school, to kids in high school, because they have one thing in mind, graduation day. Do you know your graduation day right now? What is it?
What are you saying? Sorry.
Do you know your graduation day? Do you know it right now?
No, I don't, because I mean,
I would tell you there are kids that will say, June 6th, 2024. And it's like, and when they look at you, like I'll go in and try to help them, they'll look at me like, listen, if what you're talking about doesn't get me to June 6th, 2024, shut up. Okay. And what I try to tell, like what I will tell you about this for high school, this is really, really, really what you need to learn in high school. You need to learn how you uniquely learn, which includes how you motivate yourself. The problem is when you go to high school's not built for anybody. It's not. You're all different and they try to do everything the same way. And what happens is you kind of grapple with how they learn all that. And then what everybody does when they go to college is they go, I need to figure out how I learn. We're paying a bunch of money. I better figure it out. And that's where everybody learns their way. I love talking to people in college going, how did you study? Oh, well, they would have never let me done this high school. And then they come up with this, and it's like, that's how you uniquely learn. So what I would say to you, Raheen, is do you know how you uniquely learn? And I'm going to give you a little clue on something that your dad did. Again, I understand the brain. I understand how the brain actually works. I help people get smarter quicker. The number one way to get smarter quicker is not to learn or memorize. So if I taught you, if you think about this, anytime you learn something directly, so if I taught you the capital of a country, they say you have to repeat it 3 times in order to remember it, which means I told it to you and you repeat it 3 times. When I told it to you, you only retained 25%. That's why you had to repeat it 3 times. The way you learn is to teach it. So you could spend all your time learning. Okay, you could spend 2 hours learning something and you might get it. If you spent 15 minutes teaching it to someone, you'd get it right away. What would happen every time you come home when you talk to your dad? What would happen?
You know, oh, I would tell him the whole thing because I would, so
that made you smarter. That made you smarter. So what you said is when other kids come home and talk to their parents, they don't want to hear it. What your dad is doing is when he said, oh, tell me about it, you're teaching him, it makes you smarter. You actually learn the information more because he said, teach me. But how often do you get to teach in school?
I mean, see, my school is really different. So I go to a very unique school. I go to an online American high school, and it's a Socratic school. So we learn through dialogue. And I made the first study group in our whole in the community because the high school is really new. So, and I got all A's this time, what super like humble flex right now. And I was really happy. And right now, this is the school where I know I don't have to memorize. There are no tests, like no tests at all. And I think why I flourish is because it's project-based learning. And it's because we team up on stuff and we just work on it together. And that's why I think it's great. And I know why my writing assignments are so great, because when we start a piece, like we started, reading something from Aristotle's Nicomachean, or, we started this play Antigone or stuff like that. We read quite old, works. All I do is shut off the laptop. I would shoot to my dad's room and be like, guess what we learned today? So though I am a super nerd when it comes to this, I'm like, guess what happened? And so I would tell him everything that happened in class, funny moments, sad moments, weird moments, frustrated moments. And then I would tell him. And you cannot imagine how many times I have forced him to be like, please, you read this. But he's like, no, I want to learn from you. I want to learn from your understanding. And so he does that. I know why he does that. And I'm going to talk to him about this later. But it really clarifies, because sometimes I'm like, wait, I'm lost. What happened exactly? I need to pull it up again. And then we can figure our way out of it together. And
that's how your brain actually works. So this is what I learned when I came up with this model for the mind and the brain. I learned that everybody out there thinks our brain's like a computer and you just load information. Our brain is reflexive. Is when we teach, we actually load. When we try to take information directly, we're only putting it into the 10% of our brain. When we teach, we're putting it into the 90. And so that's what your dad is doing. And that's what you're doing. When you go teach your dad this stuff, you're actually learning more.
That's true. And that also, so I have a cool story with this. So 6th grade, we started learning history. And I had a phase 7th and 8th grade. I hated history, like with my heart, all of it. And now I love it. So my elective, the only elective I take is politics, philosophy, and economics. And mostly we focus on historical events. And so what used to happen is that I was very good at history in my class. But when I studied for it at home and everything, what I liked to do was to tell a big and long story. And so what I wanted to do was that I used to sit in the middle of the exam hall, okay? And so I would have, because all my friends knew I was really good at history. And that was not because of my memorization. I loved stories. Like, you tell me, I'm going to tell you a story and I'm going to be glued here for 3 hours. So all the people would come around me, and then I would tell them a great story, right? Starting from the first civilization, and then from the Indus Valley civilization coming down, and then during that was happening, and that was happening, and then we come to, whatever the textbook stops. And I think that's what helped me, because I would tell them, and I was very creative with my notes making, because most of them were really jokes and inside jokes and stuff like that. but you know, I would explain them to people and I would teach people because I love teaching, and they would learn, and I used to ace my exams that way. So I guess
So,
storytelling's my thing. Teaching through storytelling.
well, you just nailed another major point. So
Mhm.
this is you got so many things going for you. So our brain works according to stories. So when you just give a fact, our brain doesn't retain it. You have to talk in stories. That's how you learn in stories. So that's the other reason is when you create this story, your brain holds all the information. Now, this is what I teach kids. So do you have a younger brother?
I do. He's
How old?
seven. Seven.
7. Okay. So has anybody ever said to him, don't stand on that chair?
Yeah.
And what
And
does
he
he
stood up
do?
on that chair.
So here's what's going on. So this is where I help parents. You said, do parents listen to you? This is classic, okay? Is I say, now what just happened? There's a story is in 3 parts. Every story has introduce the characters, introduce the conflict, resolve the conflict. That's every story. When you tell your brother, don't stand on the chair, you only told him one part of the story. And our brains instantly fill everything in as a story to file it away. So in his brain, his brain goes, why shouldn't I stand on the chair? What's the conflict? And what will happen if I do? And if you just say, don't stand on the chair, he comes up with, oh, you think it's really hard to stand on the chair. And you're going to be amazed when I do it. So then he gets up on that chair and he stares at you like, and you go, I tell this kid don't stand on a chair, and you know what he does? That cocky kid gets up on the chair and it's like, no, 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 no. I tell the parents that you know why he got up on the chair? Because you told him to get on the chair. Because another reason is you can't do a don't. If you're walking across the rug and there's a little bump in it, if I say don't trip, you're 3 times more likely to trip. I got to say lift your legs. Okay, lift your feet. But you can't do it, don't. So don't stand on a chair. It will make a human stand on that chair. What I would say is, hey, if you want to get injured, or hey, if you want to get punished, stand on that chair. He'll never stand on the chair. So your brain works according to stories. So I want to get to this focus thing for you. So now I'm going to tell you another thing about the brain that's going to probably blow your mind. Okay. Males tend to only be able to have one thought at a time. Females tend to be able to safely have up to 5 thoughts at a time.
Okay.
So what happens is, and this is a big part of this is that females think males think like them, and males think females think like them. Okay.
Yeah.
Your dad has one thing on his brain. And when you walk in the room and say, hey, look at this, Dad, he goes, now your dad would do this, but most dads would go, I could keep thinking about this, or I could think about that thing. I can't do both. I'll keep thinking about this. It's like, you know how many times you have to say to dad, 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 dad. Okay. Women can be having this conversation. I'll have 3 women get up in front of the group and I'll say, when I say go, I want all 3 of you to share a story about lunch yesterday, what happened at lunch at the same time. Go. All 3 women at the same time will tell a story about lunch. And when they're done, each woman can tell me what the other 2 women said. But if a bunch of women are doing that and a guy walks in the room, he's like, he's gonna walk out of the room because it's like, I can't take all this. I can't take all this. Okay. So one of the reasons why you have a focus issue is that you naturally can go out to 5 thoughts. Focus is 1 thought. Your brain, you know, you're 5 times a guy, okay? And you can out talk a guy in a hurry. When you have a 6th thought, that's when you crash. Okay. Every time you feel overwhelmed, I guarantee you, if you took out a pad of paper and wrote down the thoughts you have, there'll be at least 6 thoughts there. So one of the issues is how do you sleep at night? Do you have trouble falling asleep?
Oh yeah, because I like lay down at 11. I don't know how to see the time, but I would go through my thoughts and then I would start talking to myself and I would start talking to college myself and then kind of goes down from there.
So in order to sleep, you have to be down at one thought. So us guys, we fall asleep pretty easily. Women do not fall asleep, and it's important. Sleep is very, very important. So what I tell women is I say there's two ways to fall asleep. One is you can take a pad of paper and before you go to sleep, write down what you're thinking of. Because now that it's captured, you can let go of it. You'll be at one thought, you fall asleep. Or you can try to think of everything. And then after 3 hours, you're too physically exhausted to hold more than one thought and you fall asleep. So that's part of the issue is that as a female, you want to be able to get down to one thought and you want to make sure you never get over 5. So when you're really, really going off, it's because you have that 6th thought. Now, here's the final thing I will tell you this. Are you familiar with the term mansplaining?
Yeah.
Okay, here's the problem is, because you can hold all these thoughts. What's happening is, let's say you're sitting there at 4 thoughts and I just teach you a fact. When I teach you a fact, I'm giving you another thought and you're going to give me this look like, seriously? Now I got to hold another thought in my brain because and this is how guys take women down. Like I executive coach women. I can executive coach men and women, but I am really successful coaching women because I know how guys do all this. And so what I tell women is the problem is when you get a fact, your brain's going to make a story out of it if you don't intentionally make the story out of it. And so that's what I teach women to do, and to teach women how to stay down to one thought and use these other 4 thoughts, these other 4 ways in an emergency. I've been teaching this for like over 10 years. And like 3 years ago, I used to live up in Wisconsin in America. And the 2 biggest corporations made it a rule that you had to talk in stories at the executive level, because that's what you want to do. When you talk to a woman, you want to talk in stories because then she'll get down to one thought. So what I teach guys is when you're talking to women, if you talk in facts, these women are going to roll their eyes and not going to have any energy. If you talk in stories, the women have this moment where they're down to one thought and now they're like, and they're interested. So one of the things you can do as a woman is realize how many thoughts you have going on, because the minute you get to 6 thoughts, that's when you're going to be like, I can't keep all 6 of these at the same time. And then you're going to start feeling stressed. And then you just take out a pad of paper and capture your thoughts and let them go. And you're trying to get back to this one thought. That's why women will go to these mindfulness or meditation. The whole goal is to get down to one thought. I've asked guys, how come you don't go to meditation classes? And they'll say, I don't want to fall asleep. You don't see guys in meditation classes because we're always sitting here at one thought. Women need that because they need to have those moments coming down to one thought.
True. You're so right. And that makes a lot of sense. 3 things I had to say. One, you're so right about so as a child, I my name means obedient.
Oh.
So yeah, and naturally, if my mom would say not to do anything, I will go above and beyond and do that because it's just like I have to do it. I need to know. And recently, well, not recently, because here where we live in our community, a lot of children, they consume energy drinks like it's nothing. And our parents have like forbidden us to do that. I've had just one sip of energy drink once. Fun fact. And my brother was not allowed, and all my friends, just drink it like it's nothing. And I saw Ibrahim and he's trying to ask this guy for a sip, and I'm like, dude, come here, do not do that. He's like, but why? And I'm like, when I was little, and then I made up a story of how when I drank energy drink, not only so energy drink, the most popular one is red and it like stains your teeth bad. And so you could tell right away if someone had it. And I go like, so what happened was that my teeth were just red, like nothing else, but red for a month. And then he got so scared, he's never had it ever since.
You told the
So
story.
I told, no offense to all the children, if there might be watching, we've got to scare you. We have,
Well,
have
no, you got to
to.
tell a story. You got to tell a story, because if you had said don't drink it, I guarantee you he'd go drink it. That's
When I drank it, the one and only time is because my mom said don't drink it, and I had to. Wanted to know how it felt like, you have to know. But if you give a strong reason through a story that's engaging and fun and does not put you to sleep, it's awesome. And secondly, I tried writing my thoughts down, and there were a lot of them. Because even right now during an interview, and I think that's just me naturally, I'm thinking of a bazillion things that is not the conversation right now. So I guess that's why it's just like so many things in my mind. And the third thing, I forgot the third thing.
So here's the thing, you'll probably think about it as I say this. It's great to write those down, because then you let them go. If you don't write them down, you got to hold them, and then you're going to get stressed out. So write them down. That's great to write them down. It's great to have all those thoughts, because then you get even more thoughts and more creative thoughts. So if you haven't thought of this, I want to say this. And again, I know we're coming on. I just looked up and realized, man, this is like 50 minutes. This went quick. And that's the last thing I want to talk about is, name of my company is Flowcess. And what I do is I help people determine their unique process for flow. Flow is when you are performing and feeling your best. So the issue is that in order to flow, you got to be down at one thought. So men tend to flow more than women. And the problem is that women, they have so many thoughts and think they have to have so many thoughts, that what tends to happen is, in order to run a company, in order to be the number one person in the company, you have to flow. And what that means is you have one thought and then you give up control. It's called toggling or flowing. You're actually flowing between your conscious and your unconscious. And so you half the time don't know exactly what you're going to say. So a lot of these guys who are really good at flowing, these women will look at this guy in charge of the company and go, this guy doesn't know what he's doing half the time. And I'll say, no, he doesn't. He's flowing. And women think in order to get in control, they got to, because a woman can work her way up in a company over a man, because it's like she's 5 men. You could do the job 5 times better than me, okay? But when you get to the top, if you don't flow, you can't do that top job. And here's the thing, is if women learned how to flow, they'd be undefeated. Because if you think about it, if you'd learn to flow, then if a crisis happened, you'd have these other 4 avenues to handle it, to maintain your flow. So what I teach women to do is, in order to be in charge of these companies, is you have to learn your thought process, and you have to learn, the goal is to stay on one thing and use the other thought processes to handle a crisis and to protect my ability to stay here. Versus a lot of women go, no, I want to think of this and think of this and think of this. And you can do that, but then you're not flowing. So if a woman can learn to focus and stay flowing here and use the other 4 thought processes to prevent against a distraction, that's better than a man, because you can take a man out of flow. A man gets in flow and you just distract him and he's done. A woman can protect against it. So I always say a woman in flow is undefeated, but no one's teaching these women how to flow. So that's what, when you said that earlier on, I'm just like, you're starting to go down this path of more thoughts is better, more thoughts is better. It's like, that's not how you should use your brain. You should use your brain, stay focused, and you have 4 other thought processes. Use that to protect your ability to flow, and use that. And what you're doing, you can be flowing with me talking, and a thought comes up, you go, I'll write that down, but I'm staying flowing. I can't do that. If I'm talking with you and a thought comes up, I've done it 5 times. I've written 5 notes here. And each time I wrote it, I had to come out of flow for a second, write it down, come back in, get synced up and do it. You could sit there and stay in flow and write it down and be fine. And that's
why I have a pencil. Yeah. And now that I, have recollected the thought, So I remember I once was in this boot camp and we were doing a workshop about pitching. And so this person had, been pitching for a long time, and he was basically the person that was teaching us a few things. And he said, always tell your pitch like a story. And I've always told my pitch as a story because it's so easy. Like if you tell someone, that is why you should buy my product, I would, it would be one word out of that person's mouth and I'd already be on Instagram. So that's, I would rather not listen. But if you go like, so one day, blah, blah, blah happened, and you'd be like, I want to know more. And that's how I pitched every single one of my ideas, is that one day that happened, because that is how every idea is conceived. It's through a story. So why not tell that story naturally how it was conceived? And so I was like, so that happened. And I felt the need that there should be something like that. And now I present to you that. And because, you've already hooked the fish, it's going to be with you. You've hooked them on. And if the starter is great, which in all the tested scenarios and everything, for me has always been a story. I like to start with that. Or try to say something outrageous in the beginning of it, so it's even like better. And then after that, now that you have their attention, it's, to be really honest, it's not a lot of a job to kind of retain that, because once you've got them, you've got them for life, sort of thing.
Right. And so what you're talking about is that's true from experience. Someone has told you, you've done it, it's experience. I'm telling you why it happens. Our brain is actually made for stories. And if you only give one part, our brain fills in the other two. So if that person says, buy my stuff without a story, these people can create their own story. Oh, buy your stuff because you're going to go bankrupt. Buy your stuff because you're a liar. Versus, so you want, your brain actually works like that. So that's what's going on. So if you understand how the brain actually works and you tell a story, then people are going, thank you. They absorb it and they get down to one thought and you have their attention, everything you just said. So yeah, so what I try to do is I try to help people understand why that happens so they can do it on purpose and then do it for their uniqueness, help you be you, stay you, versus you trying to be somebody else. The more you can stay you, the more authentic you'll be, the more energy you'll have, and the more convincing you'll be.
That's so true. Thank you so much, John. It was like truly awesome to have you on, because, right now I meet so many people and I have, conversations with them. And it's been a while since I've had a conversation like this because I was really busy with school earlier. But man, it has really been awesome talking to you. And I hope we can talk more, because I do so many panels and so many discussions, and I'd like to have people like you on. So I would just love to be around you and get so many facts for this and be like, oh my God, that explains so much, because that's literally most of my thoughts during the interview. So thank you so much. And yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Please comment, give me feedbacks, and if you want to reach out to John, what's the best way that you are reachable?
Just you can go to flowcess.com, flowcess.com, and then just fill out a form to reach out, and I'm usually the one responding. And also, I'm hoping that I get to meet your dad someday. So.
Yes. Oh my God. As soon as I stop the recording, I'm going to call him, so we can definitely do that. But thank you so much, everyone, for watching. It's been an awesome time with John.